Good evening, Tewksbury. It is 6:19 on Thursday, October 21st, 2021. I'd like to call this meeting of the Tewksbury Board of Health to order. First on our agenda tonight are approval of minutes. We have three of them. From August 18th, 2021, there's a special meeting before the school committee vote. And we have our regular August 19th, 2021 meeting, and also our last meeting on September 16th, 2021. And all three, both Clerk Maria Zaroulos and I have reviewed and made our comments, so what you have reflects what we have added to it for any edits or grammatical changes. We'll take them individually. I know on the August 18th, 2021, there was a question that, I guess an oversight, we never got a second of the motion to take the vote, but the vote still carries, and
my notes, we discussed the last time this was up, my notes indicate that there was a second.
okay.
My scribbling is so terrible, I can't tell who it was, but there was a second.
Okay. Okay, and then we'll just vote in each individually. Any comments or edits from the August 18th special meeting minutes?
I have none.
Okay. Mr. Rue?
I have none other than a clarification that this board is not anti-mask. We are pro-parent choice, and that's what we were talking about. We weren't talking about mask versus no mask. We were talking about parental decisions regarding such. And I have no other updates on that, no other changes on
Okay. Dr. Bichetti?
I have no questions. I agree with Mr. Rue's statement. We're not anti-anything.
Okay. So would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes of August 18th, 2021 as submitted?
And that would be the special meeting, correct?
Correct.
Motion to approve?
Okay. The motion's been put forth in second to approve the special meeting minutes from August 18th, 2021. We'll do a vote. Since you're on the phone, Dr. Bichetti, I'll ask for your vote once I get the votes here. So, yay or nay?
Yay.
Yay.
Okay. The two board members present voted on the affirmative. Dr. Bichetti?
Yay.
3. Chair votes aye as well. So motion carries 4-0. Moving on to the August 19th, 2021 meeting minutes. That was our regular August meeting. Any comments or edits to those minutes?
I actually have read the minutes as jotted down. I've also looked at the town crier coverage related to that meeting, and there were two headlines that appear to contradict what I'm reading in the minutes. And I know that maybe the person that wrote the article for the town crier didn't have all of the information necessary, because the minutes were obviously not ready. But what was ready was the YouTube video of our meeting, which could have been reviewed by anyone for accuracy. But the headlines of the town crier indicated that some members of the Board of Health of Tewksbury questioned the vaccine. I would like to say that I didn't question vaccines at that meeting. And I think maybe it's appropriate to poll the rest of the board to determine whether they question the vaccine, because it seems to impinge on the integrity of this board, who is nothing but promoting vaccines for the health safety and welfare of all its inhabitants. But no one that I was aware of that night questioned the vaccine. I will make a clarification, though, because I had raised a point that said, if you can't take the vaccine, if you are prohibited from taking the vaccine, if there's a medical reason that you can't take the vaccine, there are alternatives available through your doctor that might assist you if you get COVID in preventing the symptoms. That is actually, I think, the attack that's necessary on this pandemic, is that you use everything at your disposal to defeat this, whether it's the vaccine, whether it's some other treatment recommended by your doctor, approved by the FDA, being utilized clinically. These are things that are happening out there that are actually saving lives, reducing symptoms. It's been documented. And the debate that's going on, all or nothing, vaccine or nothing, is simply ridiculous. And this board and this member never said anything like that. That document, the town crier, and the person that wrote that mischaracterized what I said. It ended up in a headline that seemed that this board was somehow hesitant about vaccines. I just don't think that's true. I would ask the chairman to poll the members here to determine whether or not they have some question about vaccine, because I'm pretty sure this member doesn't have a question about the vaccine. And from my understanding, no other member has a question about the vaccine. So, you know, in all honesty, that should be corrected. Not by this board having to come up here and defend itself, but by that person who wrote that headline. And not only that, there was a second headline. The matter was continued to another page, and it says, Health Board pushes alternatives to vaccine. We're not pushing alternatives to vaccines. We're telling people that vaccines are legitimate in the fight against this pandemic, that people should be able to get a vaccine. If they can't get a vaccine, there are alternatives to their health by their doctor, and that's between them and their doctor. All we did was raise the fact that there are alternatives out there, alternative that your doctor would recommend. I mentioned ivermectin. In the article, it says it is an animal dewormer. Well, I know the people that won the Nobel Prize for that would take issue with it. That's inaccurate. It's a mischaracterization. Ivermectin is not just an animal dewormer. It's a drug that's approved by the FDA.
Animals use Tylenol as well, and Tylenol isn't a animal aspirin. They actually use it for treatment in animals. And this is completely blown out of, the inference in this paper was disgusting in my mind. It was not anywhere near what was talked about in this meeting. My recollection of it was, as Bob was saying, that not only as an alternative, but in conjunction with the vaccine, that was also talked about. We're talking about vaccine, and other options along with the vaccine. Look at the breakthrough cases. You've got to have other, there's got to be other medical mechanisms to treat this stuff, and there is. So anyway, I'm sorry for.
That's okay. Going back to the issue of ivermectin and what's in this paper, calling it an animal dewormer, well, that's actually true, but that's the ivermectin for animals, not for human beings, not for human consumption. You can imagine that treating a 2,000-pound horse, cow, or other animal, that all of the products in an ivermectin for animals are for animals. They haven't been tested for humans. So in a sense, it's right that ivermectin is actually a dewormer for animals, But that's not what we were talking about. We were talking about the Nobel Prize winning people who discovered this drug that's approved by the FDA, that's being used successfully in the treatment of this pandemic. That was the point. The point wasn't that we're anti-vax, that we're looking at, as the headline says, we have doubts. No, these things were raised for the public's benefit, for their benefit, to go out and investigate with their doctors. That's not something that the town crier should be talking about, because the town crier doesn't have that authority. That's an opinion piece. This isn't journalism. This is an opinion that was placed in the headline to somehow disparage what we do here. And I would take offense to that. And the reason I take offense to that is because I think it should be accurate. Back to the problem. We have minutes that we're trying to approve here. The minutes should reflect what was said. What was said is on the YouTube video, word for word. What someone should do, if they want to quote that, is go to the YouTube video, word for word, and not create a headline that would somehow undermine what we do here as a board every month, which is try to support the public health. Okay? And if there's a vote, and there was a vote taken in the special about whether or not, someone should have choice in their health decisions, that shouldn't end up as a hit piece in the newspaper the following week. You may take issue with how we stand as a board, take issue, confront it, but don't carry it over into something that is actually a mischaracterization of what happened here. And that's what I want corrected in the minutes. So what I will do is I will take the YouTube video, word for word, I will have it drafted, and I will submit it to the board to see if that we can interject it into the minutes. And so my motion would be to withhold approval of these minutes until such time as the minutes actually reflect what was said, and that reflection is on the YouTube video.
You want me to second that? Is that up?
I can make that a formal motion if the chair would allow me to go forward.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I make a motion that we refrain from a review of the minutes for the September 19th meeting until such time as the YouTube video can be reduced to a narrative that can be placed in the minutes to accurately reflect what was discussed that evening, so that the public isn't confused by an article that shows up that mischaracterizes it.
August 19th.
August 19th.
August 19th, yes.
You want me to second that? I'll second that.
Yep. Okay, so
To
motion,
make a point, I think it's a little too late for the misrepresentation. I've got a number of phone calls on this, but
It's only our job to correct the record, and that's what we're going to do.
so motion's been put forth and second to defer review and approval of the August 19th, 2020 meeting minutes till our next meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye. So members present here.
Aye.
Dr. Bichetti?
Aye.
Chair votes
Aye, and I would like to, go ahead, Ray.
So chair votes aye as well, so motion carries 4-0. So go ahead, Dr. Bichetti.
I would like to say, without belaboring the issue, I agree with Mr. Scarano that we were mischaracterized, and I would suggest that someone that wrote the piece or whatever correct it appropriately to reflect what was said and not use political agenda to misrepresent the caring, sincere board members that are involved in the town of Tewksbury, who spend a lot of time trying to look out for the public health of our community. And I take offense as well that we were mischaracterized by someone that did not do their due diligence and obtain the appropriate information that was available on the YouTube video. So I would only hope that if they were a reasonable person, they would reflect on their mischaracterization of our board and remedy it to the appropriate facts that were relayed to the community on that meeting. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shetty. And September 16th, 2020 meeting minutes. Well, there was no article about.
Motion to approve.
Anyone willing to second the motion?
Second.
Okay. Motion's been put forth and second to approve the meeting minutes from September 16th, 2021 meeting. All those in favor will signify by stating aye.
Aye.
So present.
Aye.
Okay, Dr. Bichetti?
Aye.
Chair votes aye
Aye.
as well, so that carries 4-0. Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
while we're in this vein, I would like to just I'm going to make a statement that I just want to be heard. And I want
Sure.
it to be heard correctly, and I want to be clear about it. I don't want any malarkey with the...
Mr. Just make sure the microphone's right in front of your face so that people hear you clearly.
So I just want to make a statement that the FDA is on the verge of approving vaccinations for 5-year-olds and up. And I'm going to restate it the way we stated it with the mask mandate, is that, in my opinion, humbly, that's another parental decision. We shouldn't be mandating vaccinations for children 5 and up. And as I stated before, and I've stated many times, we should be represented from this town up to the governor and not from the governor down. That's my statement, and I just want to be heard saying that because I'm surprised it's not approved as we speak. So that's all I wanted to say while we're in that vein with
Okay.
masking and vaccinations and whatnot. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Rue.
I'm also in agreement with Mr. Rue. I would hope that people would follow the accurate science, empirical evidence, and their own unique needs of their individual and family situations upon the advice and recommendations of their doctors as well to make the best choices for themselves and their families and keep politics out of it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bichetti. Moving on to new business. First item we have is the 2022 Board of Health meeting calendar, showing our meetings at 6 p.m. on the third Thursday of every month, with all of them being here in this main meeting room at Town Hall, with the exception of the November and December meetings where we meet in the side room. And I haven't looked, but I don't think that this interferes with any holidays. I don't recall any holidays next year being on a Thursday. So anyone have any comment?
Just comment, I don't see any conflicts off the bat, and I think the dates are appropriate.
Okay. So entertain a motion to approve the meeting schedule as presented.
Second.
Well, I need someone to make the
Oh, I'm
motion.
sorry. I'll make a motion to approve the meeting schedule for 2022.
Okay. Someone willing to second?
Second,
I'll second it. Oh.
couple of them.
You're too late, Dr. Bichetti, and you're a game show buzzer. Mr.
That's
Scarano,
all right.
Mr. Scarano beat you to it.
Just barely.
But there will be other motions you can be second on. Not to worry.
I'm virtual right now. I can't push any button. It goes right through. There's no material tangent to it. Yeah.
Okay, so motion's been put forth and seconded to approve the 2022 Board of Health meeting calendar as submitted. All those in favor will signify by stating aye. So members present here.
Aye.
Aye.
Dr.
Aye.
Bichetti?
Aye.
Okay, chair votes aye as well, so that also carries 4-0. Next item is adoption of the 2013 FDA Food Code and the requirement to have one food safety certified person per shift. So let me talk about what I did. When I started working this, I realized that there are a couple other things that we needed to add into this that we have been doing all along and made sense to incorporate into this. So just in going through, I won't read the whole thing, but just taking the definition of person in charge from the state food code, which really is the federal food code with the state having some localized or regional modifications to it. That we talked before, that right now, the federal food code and the state have said that only one person at a food establishment needs to be certified in food safety. And we talked about, based on what we've been running into here in town, it would make sense as a board to have one person on each shift have that food safety training and certification. So I simply just took the definition that was in the state and just modified it here. When I did the modification, I was thinking of just the serve safe, because we were thinking that we could utilize some of the grant money to have tri-town serve safe training between here, Billerica, and Tingsboro. But then Director Sullivan pointed out that the state has, I think, a total of 5 different training
It's actually
programs that they
6,
allow. So rather than be overly restrictive, we'll just change the wording so it matches the states in terms of their verbiage for the 5 programs that they accept. There's a lengthy definition for food establishment. That came right from the state code, but I felt it was important to include in this so that I'm all about eliminating excuses. And so often we hear we didn't know. So I wanted to make sure we took the definition for food establishment, even though a proprietor can go to the state code online and see what it is. I just want to make sure we have that definition here locally so that no one can say they didn't know. The part that I changed, I'm looking, we would be adopting the entire state food code with the exception of the penalty section, because the state has criminal penalties, we have non-criminal disposition. So I made reference to that. We had also talked about trying to have this in place before the permits are renewed this year, but to have an effective date out at some point next year. So I just picked June 1st as a potential date. So that's something we can talk about as well. So my goal tonight was to sort of go over this, not to have us pass this tonight, because there's a lot for us to look at. Hopefully we can vote to approve this in November. But I just want everyone to have a chance to sort of look at everything that we've had come before us, food establishments, and what have been things that we've been recurring, either hearing or doing for folks, and then make sure that that's incorporated here. So as part of that, under the permits, I had looked at not just, again, stating the permit expires December 31st, all permits shall be renewed by December 1st of the year it was pulled, but also to talk about the seasonal food establishments. So it's clearly stated that they need to contact the health department to schedule a pre-opening food safety inspection, and they need to give at least a 2-week notice to the health department before they open for the season, and that the seasonal food establishment should not be open for business until they have passed the pre-opening food safety inspection. So just want to make sure it was all written out here. On the enforcement, the part that I didn't include, but there was a note, was consultant if needed, because We have, for more times than I care to count, we've had a food establishment permit holder come before the board, and because of repeated violations, we've required them to retain a food safety consultant to do initial walkthrough, do their inspection, put together a training program, and then monitor that training program to ensure that no violations occur. I think in most cases, we look to have 3 successive monthly reports with no violations that the consultant has noted. So just thought if that's something that maybe we want to add into the enforcement piece, so it's not just something at the board's whimsy, but rather this is something that we've been doing, it seems to have the desired effect, and therefore to put it in here so that people know ahead of time, this is what will be asked of them if they ever have to come before us. And then there was a legalese question that I posed to both town council and then to you, Bob. I had started putting together all the regulations into one large master regulation, and in all of our regulations, we have a lot of the same sections that repeat. The hearings, the variances, the enforcement, the penalties, and I'd still like to try to get that overall comprehensive thing put together, and then if we're looking at that, then do we need to really have all the boilerplate language in each and every regulation if it's in our chapters 1 through 3, the administrative and organizational. So that was more of a question I had rather than just put that all in this. If we see there's a value to having sort of shorter regulations, but know that everything is covered under the same hearing section, it's the same hearing process for all regulations, the same enforcement and so on. And if something is specifically different for that regulation, then it's called out in that regulation.
I think that document could be footnoted for those sections rather than repeating them. So during our editing process, we should be able to pare out some of the redundancy, footnote it appropriately, and point them to the right section for any enforcement, penalty, or alternative disposition.
Yeah, because I like to make sure that both we and the public or residents are clear that we have just, really, it's the same procedure for variances, for hearings, for all that, and it just gives the appearance that we have slightly different things for each regulation by having them listed in that regulation. So I just thought it'd be cleaner and easy to interpret.
I think you're absolutely on the right track because sitting here as a board member, we tend to see redundant type violations that the training will certainly assist because those violations tend to be in front of us on a continual basis. And despite the fact that we're here discussing them, the benefit just doesn't seem to be transmitted to the public and the people that actually can prevent contaminations, et cetera. So trying to codify the solutions to those problems by hiring an expert and having the expert bring people through the process. It seems that the training may actually allow people to access those experts first and create their own internal plan that might assist them in their inspection processes, and coupled with the knowledge that they're gaining from having the ServSafe person on site during operational hours would certainly reduce the number of occasions that the public could be exposed to something that could have easily been dealt with in the preparation. So I think adopting this we're moving a long way into working with the people that we regulate and trying to get them to remediate their own issues before they arise, and having the ability to consult with experts, knowing that if they run afoul of the regulation, more than likely, they're going to be working with their own expert anyways. So maybe it's a good time to look at your whole operation, talk to an expert, make sure that, you're compliant, and having that person in advance might assist and prevent a contamination. And certainly, if you come here and there's a violation, that's one of our regular remedial effects,
Yeah.
is to hire a person to guide you through the very instances that brought them before the board in the first instance.
So one of the things in researching this, which was sort of a surprise to me, is that we're talking about 105 CMR 590, which is just for food establishments. 105 CMR 500 includes frozen desserts. And we've had an issue earlier this year with frozen desserts. So I'm also looking at doing something similar for 105 CMR 500, that we can put a bit more definition locally into frozen desserts as well.
I thought your pre-opening format would fit nicely in frozen desserts, because they get ready a month before they're ready to open. There's a lot of things that need to be done to be in the frozen dessert business. The warm weather comes quickly and everyone wants to open. Of course, having a pre-opening procedure that, the director is checking boxes and the operator is checking boxes, and those things are coming into play and being satisfied before the actual opening, I think that's a good thing. So preparing in advance for those types of openings with a soft opening in their own shop would seem to make a lot of sense before they do their hard opening and they're dealing with the public.
Yeah.
So doing that over just a course of a couple of years allows the training to happen with the people that are doing the opening. They know what the expectations are, they know what the cleanings are, they know what certifications and testing has to be done, because that takes a little while. It's not something that's done overnight. Getting results back for testing, for machines, et cetera, it takes a little bit of time. Doing that soft opening and having that pre-opening procedure would get that out of the way, so there's no question that the day that they do an opening, everything is safe.
Yeah. So that'll be the next one. Then in going through it, there were a couple others, and I don't recall which ones off the top of my head, that in the 105 CMR, the public health side, or specifically in the state sanitary code, that we've not promulgated locally. Over half of them we already have in our existing regulations. So I just wanted to go through and see for those that made sense for us to do it, we do it. But this is the big one, and then frozen desserts, and then we can tackle the others. So I would just ask if you could just read through this, see if there's anything else based on our or your experiences of people, permit holders coming before us. What else would make sense for us to include in this that would, that's not in there right now?
And just so the public knows that one of the things in this regulation about having a ServSafe certified person on site at the time the food is dispensed is important, because on many occasions, the person who's certified isn't there all the time. We've heard that over and over again, and just for the public's benefit, we've heard excuses, well, I just wasn't there. And the fact is, if you have a ServSafe person there, the sanitizer is going to be right. The things that we expect that are basics are going to be executed. And that's one of the reasons and one of the things that is driving the adoption of this section of the code as our own, is that we want to make sure that someone is there, someone can correct it, someone can address it immediately, and there's some accountability before you get here and there's a problem. So, thanks for bringing that to everyone's attention.
Yeah, and I think just for the public's benefit too, and to dovetail into what you were saying, Mr. Scarano, with the sanitizer, it was either they were making it too strong, they were making it too weak, or they just did not know how to make it at all, which I'm not sure which is the worst situation, but in any case, it's a public health concern. And then the other violation we seem to be getting was temperature of food. So especially in those places that have condiments out for sandwiches or other things, of not maintaining the proper temperature, which again could lead to foodborne illness. So again, all these things would be something rectified if we had a serve-safe certified person on staff each shift. So we think it's well worth it, and I know we talked about using the public health grant potentially to offer some group trainings for food establishments in the 3 towns of Billerica, Tingsboro, and Tewksbury, and I think there's still more work to be done that, but at least we can get this part going, and then we can figure out what that training would entail. Now, is it June 1st date sound like it's enough lead time for folks, or?
I would use that as a target date. I mean, putting hard dates on in this type of environment is probably the most difficult thing that we can shoot for. But if we have a target date of June 1st, is there a chance that it might take longer than that? Sure. But at least we have a date that we're moving towards. And I think that June 1st is a reasonable target date to start putting these things in place and implementing them.
Yeah, I mean, the alternative was, as we've done in other regulations, is it'd be effective in 2 weeks, because that would then give us time to post public notice in a local newspaper. So here, we're not under time constraints, so, and we've got to figure out the training program as well. So,
May I recommend a start date of, shoot for April 1st, so that would include the seasonal businesses, because sadly, my experience on the board has been that we have people that tell us they've been in business for long periods of time. We've seen the repeated violations that have occurred, and everyone was telling us they knew what they were supposed to do and how to do it, but unfortunately their actions proved otherwise to our inspectors. And in the interest of public health, so that I believe an April 1st start date would give people plenty of time to. You can go online, even with COVID situations right now. You can go online and learn some of this material. It's not rocket science, and I have taken the whole course, and I know Mr. Scarano had taken it as well. It is hard, but it's not rocket science. It's common sense and attention to detail. And I think that I would recommend an April 1st start date as opposed to June. So I think this would be one thing that would allow us to have the time to move forward with the legal end and the timing. And I think would also cut out the potential abuses I could see from a June start date being a mandatory, and that would be my only recommendation. I agree with everything else Chairman Barry said, Mr. Scarano said, and as I've always believed, if you're going to go into business and you're going to be doing something, you should know how to do it well. And if you don't know how to do it well, make sure you engage the assistance of qualified, experienced people in the field to help you and guide you till you feel comfortable in that process, because the areas that we are concerned with food safety especially is one of the areas that things can go bad pretty quickly for a multitude of people in a short period of time without the attention to detail that should be obvious to the people that run these establishments. But from the Board of Health perspective, it's paramount. So that's my only suggestion. Instead of a June 1st date, because June, the summer's already through, I would, and we saw what happened last year with the weather starting to warm up in March and early May, and then some of the excuses that we were presented with, and supposedly from people that knew what they were doing, things that clearly obvious they didn't. So an April 1st start date, I think, would be reasonable, and I think it could fulfill all the requirements we need as a board for notification, and also maybe put a little impetus on the people for starting the new year. And other than that, thank you for the work you did on your on the food regs, because I think it's very important for our community. So that's it.
Okay, so two other things, just in terms of the actual training. I wanted to make sure that that the person took both the course and the certification exam, because there are, I guess, some places you can just take a certification exam and not even take a course. We want people to get that standard knowledge.
I
And
agree.
then be through an instructor-led course, it's something that's done in person, which I knew, Dr. Bichetti, you would fully agree with. Now, the other thing, and it's more of a question for you folks, there is no expiration date or renewal date for ServSafe certification. The National Restaurant Association recommends restaurants have their certified folks renew every 5 years.
Their certificate does expire after 5 years. It typically says it on there. So every
Okay.
5 years, they have to get a new one.
Okay,
So there is an expiration
There
date
is.
on the certificate now.
okay.
That's changed.
I'm happy to show you my certificate, if anyone would like to see it, to show that Shannon is correct, yes.
Okay. We'll get-
On the further discussion with Mr. Bichetti's suggestion for April 1st, I think his point is well taken, because there are certain establishments that close for the winter and open in the spring. And it would seem that his suggestion for April 1st is valid as it relates to those opening that have been closed for the winter. And if they want to be in business on April 1st, it would seem incumbent upon them to make sure that they have somebody that has ServSafe certification and is going to be on site. So while we're discussing this and we're revamping it, there may be a better reason to have an April 1st on the frozen ice cream than there is on a restaurant that's maintained and stayed open all year long. So I would suggest that we do look at a different date, maybe for the ice cream and the frozen desserts, because unless they're serving them all year long,
I was going to close that door. Excuse me. Probably have a noisy group also meeting at Town Hall.
unless they're serving all year long, maybe it makes sense to look at the April 1st for that particular segment of restaurants, as opposed to the target date of June 1st. So I think his suggestion is valid, and we should probably take a look at it from that standpoint.
Okay. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I'll work next on putting together a similar document for 105 CMR 500, because they're really going to dovetail together. Okay. Old business. Olivera Farm, 199 Marston Street update. I will share with the board that Early this afternoon, there was a conference call with Attorney Lawler, who is representing Dennis Oliveira's sister Tina, along with our town council and town manager and myself. And the two things I just wanted to mention as we've been looking at what's happening is we had issued an order for the immediate suspension of keeping of animals and piggery permits on September 13th with a September 21st deadline to have all animals removed. And to this date, there are still animals that are present. Our public health concern was the slaughter chain animals, so the animals that were there for purchase and slaughter. Those had all been removed before the deadline of the order, but there were some animals owned by a family member there, and then there were some other non-slaughter chain animals, chickens, I guess, for egg purposes, and ducks. So there are still some animals that remain at that property, which is in direct violation of our order. So in talking with Attorney Wawa this afternoon, he's planning on filing a lawsuit in Superior Court next week on behalf of Tina that will include a request for a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction compelling the removal of all of Eileen and David's personal property, specifically including Eileen's animals. Our other concern had been what's going to happen with the operations there, because they'd asked for a 60-day continuance of our hearing when we'd asked them to come back and report on the status of the consultant's report for proper and safe maintenance or operation of the slaughterhouse and the keeping of animals there. And Attorney Lawler had also stated that since Tina has no knowledge of farm operations, that she will not be restarting the farming or custom slaughterhouse operations while the property is owned by the Oliveira family. That instead, Tina wants to preserve the value of the property at 199 Marston Street in the hopes that someone will be interested in purchasing the property so they can operate the farm and custom slaughterhouse after obtaining all the required state and local permits. And I know one of our concerns had been when would operations restart, and we need to see that O&M manual before things are restarted, before we entertain that. So I just wanted to give the board an update on both matters, that the removal of the animals from the property as it related to a public health issue, that's been taken care of. The remaining animals, since they're owned by a family member, there's just been some legal wranglings behind the scenes of trying to get that rectified. So we're hoping that next week the filing will get us closer to getting the full conditions of the order met. And then, I know, Bob, we talked with...
Yeah, they seem to be moving in the right direction. They've initiated what we've been suggesting all along, is to utilize the power of the courts to get where they need to be, to get into compliance, number one, and to determine their own futures. And that appears to be what Attorney Lawler is moving towards, with a hearing coming up that would actually move this, our order, excuse the pun, along the food chain, and it would actually bring them into compliance with our order if, in fact, he was successful in his Superior Court effort. With that, I think we should make a motion to have the director file a report, gather all the information, and provide the information to town council in order that he can better advise us on what the next step would be for the board.
Okay.
So that would be a motion on my part, is to have the director assemble the information necessary to compile a report for town council to bring him up in speed. That may even include what's occurred at Superior Court, so that she can include that part in the report to determine compliance, and then have town council advise us as how we should proceed, either at the next meeting or when the information's available.
Okay. Someone willing to second that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion's been put forth and seconded. I will not restate the whole motion due to its length. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All right.
Dr. Bichetti? Looks like he dropped off.
I think he's on mute.
Dr. Bichetti, are you on mute?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Was that aye, you're on mute, or aye for vote? Just to be
Aye
clear.
for a vote.
Okay. Chair votes aye as well, so motion carries 4-0.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
are we still visiting the farm to make sure these animals are being cared for, or are we, the remaining animals, the pets, the horses and goat and whatnot? Last time I checked, the person that owned them didn't have the funds available to care for them.
It's my understanding that animal control still visits the farm. There is somebody living on site taking care of them, but no longer really wants to take care of the animals.
So one of the things that we're reaching out to the animal control offices and our animal inspector is for someone to get a current census of all the animals that are there so that we're clear about, and the court could be clear about what specifically needs to be moved in terms of type of animal and quantity.
Yeah, well, that might, in the meantime, the humane care of the animals is important, and there was some writing about the fact that a couple of the horses were extremely thin, and one of them had sores on its back and whatnot, so I'm just concerned that the animals are being at least looked at, and if need be, we can maybe try to find something to help them feed them.
Right. So I think for me, one of the key takeaways from the meeting this afternoon is the fact that this is not a temporary cessation of operations. This is a permit. So we're looking for something in writing from them on that. But that then means that the placement of these animals that remain on the property is not a short-term boarding solution. It's a permanent relocation. So we've also reached out to the animal control office and the animal inspector to come up with locations that would be willing to accept these animals as well.
Okay.
And we're hoping the court will take action quickly next week, and that will then help accelerate getting the animals off the property and to good homes.
And just the type of relief that Attorney Lawler is seeking, I mean, he's seeking a temporary restraining order, and he's seeking a preliminary injunction, both of which, if he can show that there's a likelihood of success on the merits on those, that will issue immediately. And any delay in that would result in a contempt of court, and the court will be able to address that immediately. So this mechanism is by far the best solution because the court keeps their thumb directly on the situation. And I think assuring Charlie is that they're not going to allow any neglect to continue.
Well, and to that point, that's why we are offering to provide Attorney Lawler with suggestions for receiving facilities, because our question was, so the judge issues an order, how's that going to be enforced? So we're trying to provide some options that he can then build in so that when the judge approves it, he's not approving something he doesn't know what's going to happen with them, who's going to get them, but it's much clearer. So, again, from the motion, we hope to hear a report from the director once Attorney Feely has received information as well.
I
about
just
how
want to make
things-
sure somebody's keeping an eye on the animals in the meantime.
Yeah, and I think,
While,
yeah, and I think from what you were saying, even though we're not getting all the email reports, they are still going out there because they have their concerns. But it seems to be, unfortunately, when lawyers involved, that, no offense, it slows things down.
None taken.
And that's not from the billing aspect, though. That's just all the dealing with the courts and so on. So that was everything I had to update you on Oliver Farm. Director reports.
For the food consultant, I met with Bridget on October 13th. We went through the inspection she's completed, talked about issues that she's been finding around town, how we're going to address those and handle those, and discussed how many she has left. All inspections will be completed by the end of the year. For the public health grant, I had interviews with myself, the Tingsboro and Billerica health directors 2 weeks ago for both the inspector and nursing positions that we're hiring for. More inspections are being scheduled for the inspector position, but we all mutually agreed on a nursing candidate that we're checking references for. Hopefully by next month we can get somebody on board, which will be really nice. Pam is having a backyard hen meeting at the library on October 27th from 6 to 8. She's doing this in hopes that she can start like a backyard chicken group that can discuss issues that they're having, ideas for different things they're doing, so it will continue going forward. We also hired a new contact tracer. Her name's Anne-Marie Lane. She came on board to hopefully help alleviate some of the workload on our 2 nurses in the schools. She's not a nurse, but she does do follow-up phone calls for the nurses, and any questions she has, she really is working under the nurses, but I also help with that as well. So it's nice to have somebody else on board with that. And then the COVID update, booster shots from Moderna and J&J for adults who are at high risk or over the age of 65 were approved by the FDA. They're just waiting to hear from the CDC. If approved by the CDC, they could be available within days. Pfizer is expected to get approved to vaccinate kids 5 to 11 as early as next month. These doses will be smaller and used with smaller needles as well. As for the numbers in town, the past 2 weeks there have been 32 cases townwide. This week there are 41 cases. The trend for the past month has been hovering between 47 to 32 cases weekly. Since last meeting, the town's vaccination rate has increased by 1% for a total of 68% of fully vaccinated residents. There's also currently an outbreak at Woodhaven, the memory care in town. All residents are vaccinated. They're doing their best to isolate. They close the dining room. They do testing every other day. So just kind of monitoring that right now. And as far as school numbers, according to their website, there are 18 active cases for the past week or 2 weeks. That's all I got.
You going to give us an update on the traditional flu shots that aren't going to be available till we get a nurse in here?
Yeah, so we do have flu vaccine in the fridge. However, we don't have a nurse to administer it. So I'm trying to work with the MRC to get a volunteer nurse to start flu clinics on a small scale, which is what we do always anyway, in hopes that we can help residents get access to flu vaccine. And then when we do get a nurse, hopefully soon, she will be able to run more clinics and offer more vaccine.
And I'll just add to that, because I got my flu shot today at Walgreens on River Road, which used to be Rite Aid. CVS and Walgreens, you can make online appointments. The Walgreens at River Road, my daughter mentioned, she's a nurse, and she was surprised that even like today, they were full of openings in the appointments. So residents are also able to, at no cost, because insurance picks it up, go to the pharmacy websites, and you can also book an appointment as well. And I was in and out in about 10 minutes.
I get a lot of calls from senior citizens for some reason. And they're comfortable going, they're kind of in the senior center swing of things over there. So
Right.
that was the only reason I asked that.
Just a point of information, there is 2 different types of shots for the elderly and for non-elderly. So if you're at higher risk, even close to that elderly, you might want to check with your doctor about the appropriateness of which shot is best for you. And one clarification for me on the record, I may have said Pulitzer and I meant Nobel, if that.
Oh, you said Nobel.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I said Nobel.
You're going to see something, Dr.
Correct.
Bichetti?
May I ask, Shannon, I am aware of some nurses that, there were some situations, I believe, with their jobs that may be available, and I know that they're doing some things in some clinics. Is the town in the process of hiring the nurses, maybe on an on-call basis, to administer some vaccines, that maybe it might be an option where you get a few people that are well qualified to do it. I don't know if they're in the, I don't know if there's any more opportunities for that with the funding that's available to pay these nurses to come in and maybe dedicate some time as opposed to getting volunteers. Sometimes volunteers are nice, but I find that it can be fraught with some issues occasionally. I was just wondering because I know I was speaking with some nurses and they were letting me know, and I said, this had nothing to do with what we're speaking about now, but they were telling me what they're doing. But I could see the potential for maybe availability to help if the town's still looking for some additional nurses to help out on a locums kind of basis.
I'm not sure about the funds, but I think we're going to try the MRC route first to see if we can get anybody volunteering to help rather than trying to pay somebody, because by the time that happens, we might actually have a nurse on staff.
And just-
Okay, I just thought I was just looking for quick solutions in that one because I don't know how long does the MRC take.
That email was sent out today to all the volunteers at the MRC.
Yeah, and Dr.
Okay.
Bichetti, just so you're aware, I guess in disclosure, I've been a member of the MRC here since 2004, along with my wife. Historically, the MRC nurses have been utilized as overflow solution for the member towns for especially flu clinics. So they've, whether it's Tewksbury residents or residents from the other 6 member towns, there's been heavy reliance on all these communities to utilize our pre-trained volunteer staff, especially the nurses for the flu clinics. So there's been a lot of history both in this town as well as the other member towns of using these folks.
Okay, thank you. That's good for clarity. I was looking for, if we can get the volunteers to come in quickly, that's always wonderful. But as I said, I was just trying to come up with another potential alternative, but that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Any updates from any board members on anything?
We won't meet again until after Halloween. Obviously, want everyone to enjoy a safe and happy candy collection effort, and hopefully using all the protocols that are in place to protect everybody, including children and parents.
Well, I guess, Mr. Rue, it's time for your motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we close tonight's meeting.
Okay, someone like to second the motion? Now's your chance, Dr. Bichetti.
I'll second it.
Okay. So motion's been put forth and second to adjourn tonight's meeting. All those in favor will signify by stating aye.
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 Dr. Bichetti?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well, so motion carries. So it's 7:23 PM. Good night, Tewksbury.
Good night.